Good afternoon, everyone. So, we are here today on another live session with a planning permission professional from Xenopoli, an award winning planning professional, as that's what's on their profile. And I'm really intrigued to know what they do, how they do it, because I've seen a lot about them on their live stories and their posts. So let's jump in with Sam Sutton. Hello. It's gonna take.
Good morning.
Hello, how are you?
Good, good. And yourself?
Fantastic, I'm very well, thank you.
Good, good. Did I say your name correctly? Sem Setin, right?
Yes, perfect. Semset in Karahan, founder of Xenopoli.
Okay, great stuff. Thank you so much for jumping on this live session today. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Um, so before we start, I mean, I've seen a lot about what you do on your live stories in terms of planning permissions that you get for houses or developments or new builds or whatever like that. And there's a lot that you can possibly teach me today in terms of being a broker. A lot of other viewers that may jump on this live session, they may have certain questions for planning permissions as such. So it'd be great to learn from you. Um, so before we start, can you just introduce yourself and who you are and what you do so that we can get the conversation going?
Absolutely, I think I can learn a lot from you as well, Murtaza, so the feeling is
Thank you.
mutual. Thank you very much
Absolutely.
for having me again.
Not at all.
My name is Semset in Karahan. I'm the founder of Xenopoli. We are a planning permission, we're an architecture company that specializes in the type of planning permission that we specialize in is residential for low-rise buildings, double-story, terraced, semi-detached, detached, and so on. Dealing with maximizing floor space, converting into
Okay.
flats, and HMO and so
Um, have you, I mean, Xenopoli, is that your company? You're the owner of
on.
the company. Fine. And so just before we get into it, what I wanted to ask you is the planning and the property side of it. Did you always think that you're going to get into this sort of business? I mean, did you always have that idea in mind that, okay, I mean, what's the qualification that you achieved to get into the planning department?
Sure. That's a great question. I've just to step back and give you a bit of my an insight into my career. I was always in within the architectural industry, so that's where I've got my formal education and so on. And I previously, before starting Xenopoli, just over 3 years ago, I worked within an established, successful architectural practice, and I worked my way up within perhaps 7, 8 months. I became the associate director, doubled their office spaces, doubled their monthly return, and increased success rates in planning permissions. Within that experience, of course, I had the opportunity to work with a lot of developers, a lot of investors, a lot of landlords, to work on a lot of contentious residential developments, and really refine the area within architecture, within planning permission specifically, that I really wanted to get into. And what I'm doing now is what my passion is in permission area.
I always put a note on my social media platforms, don't call me during this time, but yet people call. But yes, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, not at all, not at all. Yeah, so and then of course I founded Synoply just over 3 years ago. Now we've got a small team of four. We've got a 70% referral rate, 5-star review ratings. Dealt with a large number of contentious residential developments, and so that's what we focus on. We've had the opportunity, and we've been asked to expand in different areas and offer different services, such as structural, such as construction, And a lot of the time, I respectfully refuse because we'd like to focus on what we do best, which is residential planning permission. And I'm fortunate to work with a small, tight-knit group of professionals as well to deliver that end product for our clients.
Just before we carry on, so when you were young or like a teenager or something, did you have that architectural mind frame that, okay, you know, this is what I want to do and I want to get into architecture? Were you good with drawings or art and all that kind of stuff? You know, I know that my wife is an architect herself, and I'm going to tell her to look at this live session.
Fantastic.
So one of the tasks that architects have is to draw a straight line without it going curved or bended or something. So did you always sort of have that mind frame that, okay, this is exactly what I want to do? And
yes.
What university did you go to?
Yes. To answer the first question, yes. I think it may have been from the age of maybe 12 or 13. That's when I learned how to draw my first 2-point, 3-point perspective.
Okay.
And then from there, I would go back home and practice. So yes, from a young age, always I wanted to be within this industry. And as time went on, I started to specialize and within the area that I'm doing now, which I personally prefer and personally enjoy. And I've been doing it for 6, 7.
And how long was the course at the university? I mean, one of my friends at university was doing this, and they had a course of about 6 years or something that they had.
It ranges. To answer your second question, just before it slipped my mind, I studied at the Oxford Brookes School of Architecture.
Okay.
I believe at the time that I was studying, it may have been top 10 within the UK. Okay. Which is great.
For the architectural field.
I believe so. If I'm not mistaken.
My brother studied at Oxford Brookes, but he did business. Something.
Oh right, okay, fantastic. Yeah. But I believe it was top for architecture, and I was very fortunate to be within the new facilities, within the highly experienced and skilled network of people within that came out and that was studying and actually graduated from that university. But the course, it varies. It's 3 years, 5 years, depending on the direction that you want to go in. And right now I am professional life, working on my career and of course building the company.
Great stuff. So once you finished university, then you did you have to study ahead to get the RIBA qualification, or is that joint in with the degree that you do at university?
Usually you do. You do. Depending on the country that you're in, you have to postgraduate. You carry on, and I'm sure that your wife can tell you as well.
I mean, she studied in Pakistan, so she's not yet practicing, because when we got married right after university, you know, we had kids and everything, so she's still not in that practicing world. But I will definitely tell her to speak to you once she's all over with kids and everything. So yeah, I mean, that's what I wanted to. That's why it's great to know all these. To have that knowledge frame that, you know, that if someone does ask me in the future or something like that, you know, I have this information from people like yourself, and I can direct them to yourself in terms of getting that information, getting that knowledge. But this is why I'm doing these live sessions with people from all different backgrounds to just, you know, shed knowledge, because there are people right now who don't know what to do, possibly youngsters who are in the middle of their career. They're confused with all this, what's going on, and maybe this knowledge might just put them in the right direction to achieve something that they've thought of or they've not thought of. You know, it just makes it more easier for them.
Absolutely.
So we were talking about you know, the RIBA stuff. How does that work in terms of
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. To go back into what you said, for your wife, it will be an absolute pleasure just to jump on a call and have a chat with her. Absolutely. If I can offer my tips, excellent, and I'm sure that I can learn from her as well.
Sure.
In just general, and helping others, of course. There are a lot of students before university, and even during university, that they need help. They need a bit of a guidance in terms of what they'd like to specialize in, the sort of the route that they'd like to take, and what professional life is like in general. So if we can help, then of course that's excellent.
Absolutely.
Which is great. There within it varies within countries. Like there's the AIB and there's the RIBA. Within UK, I believe it's a degree, and it's also a postgraduate as well. And depending on the area that you want to go in, and depending on how you want to progress with your career, and the different areas that you want to specialize in, then of course you have to refine your route accordingly, right? So it's very subjective, very dependent on each professional and how they want to create or direct their career.
Okay. And then once you graduate from university, after that you graduated, did you get your career job straight away, or did you sort of had to sort of push yourself and work and give interviews and all that kind of stuff? If you can just take me through that journey of yours.
Absolutely. When I graduated, if we take a step back, during university, I tried to expose myself to as many, try to expand my network as much as I can and to learn as much as I can.
Sure.
So with all of the skills that I learned, to really explore every different avenue that I can possibly do and really follow what I enjoyed. So I built a large network as well. So during university, I was even I had clients. I was doing.
So you were doing the drawings and the works and everything for them. That's a great piece of advice, like and you're the second person that has come on this live call and said that they actually did the same. They actually started their careers at university.
Yes.
To sort of go on and then move on in life as soon as university is finished. So it's good to, that's a great piece of advice, that when you're at university and the career path you're in, you should take these small odd jobs so that builds your experience and that you can put it on your CV to show that, look, I have all this experience with me.
Absolutely. So I completely agree, and I appreciate you saying that. It's to take a backtrack through university. I knew that I wanted to be within this industry from the age of 12, 13. So when I was at university, I took that opportunity to really expand my network, which I fortunately did. And of course, I had a number of private clients and helping them, and even through university, successful planning permissions for smaller residential developments.
Sure.
And
these planning permissions, these planning permissions that because obviously you're not working for a company and you didn't have your own company. These planning permissions were going under your name?
Yes.
And the councils didn't have any issues, or, they didn't see a company track record or anything like that at that point?
It was, at that point, I was working, it's different. I wouldn't say it's necessarily the arrangement that I've got now. It was I was working, of course there were closer friends, there were clients, and of course there were friends, there were people that I knew, so I was doing it more as for me to gain experience,
Gotcha.
But just to help so it's not necessarily me doing it on their behalf, I'm doing it with them, so we would apply.
Got you. So so on the planning application, it would always be their name or your name?
Usually.
It would be the owner's name, basically. Okay.
So we do it together usually, and the main reason why we do it like that is my main perspective there was to build experience and of course to help. Yep. And every application that's been submitted during those times were successful, right? Which is great. And so during that time, I was doing a lot of private work as well in that sense, and I built out a network. Of course, I became a client that I had from there was my second year and third year landlord at university, right? And then we built a relationship. still in a relationship till today, right? So I'm still helping with
So he
projects
gave you
over.
he in effect gave you your first break basically into this
Yes.
whole. Okay, that's a good that's a really good insight. So guys who's at university, always start your business from your landlord.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, because because you're studying at university to gain some of the hard and the soft skills and that you need in order
Yeah,
to excel in your career, right? So
absolutely,
if you can try and do that during university phase, then it's going to really it's going to be beneficial to everyone, right? It's going to
absolutely.
be beneficial to everyone providing your if whether it's your employer that you're providing your experience and your skill to, or
Yep,
whether it's a direct client, right? Because it's in everyone's best interest that
absolutely.
you use the time at university to really give you a head start when you do start your career. So before I even graduated, I was dealing with projects, gaining experience.
How many projects did you sort of close while you were at university?
Yeah, I'd say a few,
Okay,
just a few. That's the main reason why I say, and all of them were successfully completed.
that's amazing.
And that's something that I always make sure
And
it's
that's a
just to
good
make
thing.
sure
That's
or
a good
just
thing that you can
it's
put
done
on your CV that you completed all these projects and they were all
well.
successful. So when it comes to getting that job or getting that break in your career, they've already seen that, and with planning applications, you can't really lie because if you put those planning application numbers and someone checks it, they can always see your name,
Yeah,
like
absolutely. Absolutely. So it's no, no, absolutely. So of course always be transparent. So just to step back, it's throughout university, from the age of 12 or 13, I knew I wanted to be within the industry.
yeah,
Throughout university, I had the hone and the direction I wanted to go in, and then I started to build a few clients. It happened naturally, unexpectedly. When I say clients, I mean in the student term, right? Not as it is now as an established company.
yeah.
Before it was in the student times, building out networks, I became close friends with my second year landlord, developed a relationship, and now they're an actual client, which I've had for over 5 years, right?
Wow.
Who've been with me, great people who I appreciate, who have believed in me and who've been with me from a young age. And from there, when I
It's
graduated,
always good to have people like that in your life, who not just have the best interest of yours, but they are actually they look after you in your career. When you're actually looking for that break or you're looking for that sort of job, they actually give it to you, and it's good to have those people around you. It's great.
absolutely, absolutely, and I really appreciate them supporting me as well. And of course, I everything that we've done is successful in terms of the proposals, and of course helping them as well. So it's mutually exchanged, which is excellent, and I'm happy with. And when I graduated, of course, I had that experience and I built up that portfolio. But I went and I was looking to start my first, I would say, your typical office job, your 9 to 5 in architectural practice. So I was applying, and shortly after, I believe it may have been after a few months, I got my first position. It was within an established architectural practice,
Do you mind? Do you mind?
small
Do you mind
architectural.
giving the name, or is that
I'd
confidential?
say I'd probably leave it there. But I've just out of respect, I don't know. For me, of course, I'm always transparent in anything
Yeah,
that I say or
yeah,
do.
yeah.
But out of respect for them, I haven't. I before I say something, I'd like to always ask permission from someone else,
Absolutely.
right? I'm
That's
sure
fine.
it's fine.
That's fine.
But they were an established architecture company. The managing
I
director,
mean, London based, central London based, or
London. Yeah,
okay,
yeah, London-based, South London, London-based, and the managing director. I appreciate the guidance that he gave me from the time that I was there. But when I got my first position there, I worked my way up. I believe maybe 2 or 3 promotions later, within a 7 8 month time period, I became an associate director.
okay,
Then we opened up new offices, and of course, doubling the number of offices, increasing the number of employee.
And what did you do different that you changed the perspective of that company single-handedly? Was that single-handedly that you did it? I mean, that's why they believed in you and they promoted you to a associate director, right? I mean,
I believe of course it was through track record, right?
okay.
Because as you can imagine, coming off university with my with what I done, with where I went, with the portfolio that I built just from scratch, right?
Yep.
With no handouts or
Experience.
anything like that.
Yep.
Just from scratch, right? And I built that by cultivating relationships and built a lot of experience from that perspective. And of course, when I started, it's they with the track record that I built there, you know, going from dealing with going from an architectural assistant to team leader, then to associate director. So it just gradually happens by showing your track record and what you do for them, right? But the end result.
I've heard that architects have a long day, and that day is even longer than sometimes traders on the trade platform. So is that right? I mean, when it comes to drawing and, you know, putting things together and all that kind of stuff, especially when you have to meet council deadlines, for example, you know, in terms of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Typically, I would say generally their days are longer because it's not necessarily clock in, clock out, right? Because you have a personal investment into each one of your projects, right? And you want to make sure it's done well. And sometimes it takes longer than expected, and it's a lot more flexible, so you can invest time into it. And that's sort of the dynamic that there is within the architectural industry. Especially dealing with the professional and the project. That's the sort of dynamic that they have. It's very ad hoc. It's very flexible, and you sometimes you get carried away, right? You want to you put stuff at a different time, but you want to invest more, right? You want to give more because it's a representation of you as well, and you want to help your clients out. So that's why you invest more time before you. Before the cake leaves the showroom, if you will, right? You want to make till the last minute. You're always adding detail. So that's probably why.
And while you were at the firm, was it hard in terms of dealing with so many things at once? Like on one side you have your team, on one side you have the directors, on one side you have the client, and on the other side you have the council. You know, is it like easy to deal with in terms of that? I mean, how do you juggle around with so many people that you rely on to make the client happy?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I started at quite a young age, so that's why I've got so much experience as I have now. From when I was in that position, I was 22, I believe.
Okay.
I was 22. I was managing a team of 5 or 6.
Okay.
I was managing perhaps 15 clients, 20 clients, and of course we have the manager, we have the managing directors and the directors, and of course managing all those applications as well, right? So it was at the age of 22, and it's at that stage, of course, it was quite. If you look in retrospect, being transparent, it must have been difficult, right?
Absolutely.
It must have been difficult. But I've now, of course, it's looking in retrospect, I can appreciate that it was difficult. But in that time, it didn't feel difficult because everything was managed and under control. I was able to manage it and put it under control. And even now, right, we've got 15, 20 clients still, right? All in one go. So it's and a high number of applications, and it's still managed well. But I can still appreciate that it must be difficult. And the way that you can deal with it is really setting expectations, right? It's setting clear expectations with yourself, with people who you're working with your client. When you're working with your client, it's a very it's a really fulfilling experience, right? Because when you're working with your client, there's an understanding, there's a flexibility.
Absolutely.
They know that you're invested in their project.
Yep.
And they want the best out of their project.
Yep.
So it's a very to and fro, a very it's a great dynamic, right?
Did you always go through the fact that let's say the client comes up to you and says, I need this planning for this property. He's already got a mindset that, okay, I want to build maybe 2-3 flats out of this house. And you say, but I think if you build 2-3 flats out of this house, you're not going to get the space that you want, and they might not sell or rent in the market as well. So at that point, does the client sort of tend to listen to you, or they say, no, okay, go ahead with what I'm saying, and that's it?
Oh, right. Yeah, I know what you're I've just to where I am right now in my career, I'm very fortunate and I'm very grateful because I've built a lot of experience dealing with a number of applications that I can't count on my hands and feet, right? Contentious developments that I've can. So what I do is week in, week out, I do a very similar development, very similar applications. So I know it
so
very
you sort of get your knowledge on that. What I should say is that you're looking at one aspect of planning, but you want to master that aspect of planning. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. So
rather than going into different fields like commercial or PRS schemes and all that kind of stuff, you're looking at residential, trying to get that sorted, master that, and then possibly move on.
Yes.
Now, I just want to move on from when you were at the firm and to when you started your company. What were the hardships that you went through, and what were the challenges that you faced of going through all of that and setting up? I mean, when I set up my company, it wasn't that hard because I'm a broker, right? And you have a property, you have a client, you match the two, it's done. But here you're looking at dealing with the council, with again the same the client, all that kind of. So what were the hardships that you faced moving from a firm and then setting up Xenoply?
Yeah, if I can, Murtaza, let me just conclude your previous question as well in terms of do clients advise and so on.
Yeah.
I'm in a fortunate position now where yes, of course. Just the main reason being is my clients know that I'm for them, right?
Yeah.
So if I was to advise, it's not for my benefit. If I say a certain number of units can't be done on the site, then I strongly believe a certain number of units can't be done on the site because before I advise, I've spatially measured it and checked, and I've also checked the policies, right? And of course, peppered with experience. So these three are coming at the same time. It's not willy-nilly.
So before you advise the client, you actually go to the site, you see all of the things, or no, you just do a Google Earth and you check it out?
I used to, but now because I've built up so much experience, I can just tell off the bat. And if I need to conduct a desktop study, then 5-10 minutes, then I will conduct a desktop study. But typically, because I've been focused on this an area for so long, I typically would know what's viable, what's not viable, and if I need to go further and do a preliminary study, a desktop study, spatially measure it and see how many units we can achieve, or have a look at the policy, then I will as a precautionary measure. But typically, I would know. So I am fortunate to.
So what you can build on that and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Cool. And then just moving on from the firm to Xenoply, the hardships that you faced.
With starting the company I think it's similar to anyone who starts a company, right? Because not only are you doing your career as a professional regardless of which respective industry you're in, you're also learning the business aspect of it. You're managing other variables as well. Especially in the beginning, from the accounting perspective, for example. So that's naturally a hurdle, and it's sometimes it would distract away from what's important. But now I'm fortunate to have a small team of 4 and of course you're still doing as much as you can, but you get to focus on certain areas, be more specific in what you focus on, as opposed to being very vague and being scattered, right? So to going back to what we said before about managing, how you would manage a council, how you manage this, how you manage that.
Yep.
Setting up processes and systems that you build up over time, which I have now.
And when you started, did you have a team ready, or no, gradually you went on and
No.
first you started on your own and then you hired one or two
Absolutely.
people? Okay.
Absolutely. So I started on my own, and I want to make sure that before I delegate or before I ask someone to do something, that I can actually do it myself, right?
Okay.
I know let me do it myself. Let me see what the pitfalls are. Let me see what the pros are, the negatives are, and then I can delegate and understand really how to delegate that specific task to someone else.
That's great.
I do it first and delegate.
Just quickly, any viewer who's got any sort of questions regarding planning permission, regarding architecture drawings, do put them in here so they can be answered. So when you and then this team, did that come along in the first year, or you had in year one you were yourself and then you moved on in year 2 and 3? Like, it's been what, 3 years, right? 4 years?
Yes, around 3 years.
Okay. So did you start on in year one yourself, or no, within 6 months you had your team and it was all ready to go and everything?
It was year one, it was definitely myself, and with the intention of building out the team. Then year two, of course, it started to build out. Year three, building on what happened in year two. It's but in year one, it was definitely myself, doing from A to Z. At one point, I remember
And
doing
how many planning applications did you go through in that year one?
Oh, that's a great question. That's actually a great question, and it will be great for me to actually look at my data, right? In year one and year two, it must have been a high number. In year one and year two, I was very data driven in terms of just having a look at what worked, what didn't work. I would assess. In which application is successful, which wasn't successful in different boroughs, why wasn't it, and then really hone down of what's viable in different boroughs, right? So really learning. So that's a great question, and I'll definitely need to revisit. But it was a very, it was a high number, let's say.
Good stuff. That's great. and out of that high number, what was the pass rate? And I don't want to say the failure, because when it comes to failing, you actually have the chance to appeal that, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So at first instance, what was the pass rate and the fail rate? Was it like 50-50 or 60-40?
Yeah. In the first, I remember specifically from the first and the second, because like I said before, I was assessing data. Less now, because as time goes on, you sort of redirect your focus, and a lot of things have already been done, so I don't need to do it again, right?
Yep.
So in year one and year two, I believe it was between 95% and 98, 95 and 98.
That was your pass rate.
It was over. It was definitely over 90. It was definitely over 90. And to go back into what you said about unsuccessful or failure applications, the only some applications need to be refused because they can only be gained consent on appeal. To make it contentious, because appeal is
the council does this purposely.
I wouldn't say they do it purposely, but they do have policies against it, and some councils necessarily resist certain types of developments. So you do appeal that decision to a planning inspectorate, which they govern, their national body. There may be another angle, another opportunity to try and push for planning. So, like you said, there's an opportunity to resubmit, and there's an opportunity for an appeal. So the only time it becomes an unsuccessful application is once you stop trying, right? So that's
gotcha.
Yeah. But it's I mean, it's a process.
Okay. So while now you're at Xenoply and you're doing all these various planning permissions and everything, what's the most difficult planning permission that you've had to go through?
One of the most difficult. Oh,
Actually, I'll put it this way: which was the most difficult and which was the most easiest? So if you want to,
okay.
whichever one you want to say first.
If it's you take me down to memory lane.
That's the point of this live session, right? That I want to give that knowledge to people that look, business or anything, any profession is not easy.
Absolutely.
You have to put your work into it. And I could be sitting here and I could interview like 6-figure, 7-figure people who are doing it, on a big front, but that's not ground people. We are ground people, and that's what people want to see. They want to see that how people are currently facing hardships, and that's going to be my future questions as well, that how you're adopting to this current market and all that. So do take me through your most difficult and your most easiest planning application at your company.
Fantastic. Yeah, I completely agree and echo everything you just said. It would be, I've went through so many, it'll be difficult to remember. I've got a few in my mind, but before we get there, if I was to generalize it, the most simplest or the most easiest, if you will, again, no planning application is guaranteed. You can never guarantee 100% planning application. You can go close, right? And for many years, I was always trying to do everything I can to make sure that it's very close to 100%.
Yep.
But you can't guarantee 100%.
Yep.
But any lawful development certificate for proposed use, permitted development rights, an outbuilding, a loft conversion, a front porch, a single-story rear extension by maximum depth of 3 meters, so on and so forth. So those type of developments, they have a very high success rate because they fall under permitted development rights. So you simply just apply to regularize it. So those would most likely be the easiest. But when you apply with a full planning application, it's more contentious. And the factors that make an application more contentious, it's a full planning application, so it's open to a wider set of policies, and it's either it's within a conservation area or it's either a locally or statutorily listed building. So if we bear both of those three in mind, a full planning application, listed building, and a conservation area, that would lead me on to one of my most contentious developments, which is in the London Borough of Ealing. I was fortunate to work with a group of people. One of the client for a group of people was an overseas investors in Dubai.
Okay. And
I believe this was the client that I received perhaps 6 months after starting business.
Okay.
And which was fantastic. So it's an overseas developer, and I learned a lot, of course, on that proposal. And the proposal was the existing building was a Georgian property, 1890, 1880, I believe, double story, lower ground unit. Georgian property, very fixed in its structure, and renovating a Georgian property in 18th.
And most of these houses in Ealing are pretty, they're substantial in space,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So very substantial in space. And so it was a Georgian property. The client was an overseas investor in Dubai who was looking to invest in the UK market.
Yep.
They approached me 6 months after starting Xenopoli. And the existing building was a double-story Georgian property, lower ground floor, detached, great site, large garden, front forecourt. And the proposal was to maximize the number of units, right?
Okay.
I remember this was one of the most contentious developments. I remember before, especially during that phase, and even now, before accepting a client, I like to assess what's viable and what's not viable, as opposed to saying yes, yes, yes. It's important just to see what's viable and what's not viable. So before we went ahead with that project, I wanted to assess to see how many units. When I was assessing it, I assessed between 5 and 6, right? 5 and 6 on that property was pushing it, right? And I will always push for the upper limits, but I want to be conservative as well. So I said conservatively 4 units, upper limit 6 units. Initially, they believe you can get 8 or 9 units, but again, going back into what you said about
You just brought him down drastically.
yeah, I have to.
And did he buy this property before he came to you, or did he buy this property after? So after he consulted you on what can be done and everything, then he went ahead and okay, got you.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
So
So that's the relationship that I've got with my clients, and there's a lot of trust as well, right? Because before I say something, as if it's my property, they're ideal with a lot of developers, a lot of landlords, a lot of investors. So before I give an advice, I want to make sure that would I advise myself on this property, right?
Okay.
So initially they had an idea of 8 units or so, but I assessed it, said conservatively 4 units, pushing it 5 to 6. The end result, we were able to get 6 units on that site. After 6 months, this is within my first year, one of the most contentious.
And he bought that subject to planning.
They were an overseas investor in Dubai, so they were of high net worth. They were able to buy the property, not subject to planning.
Okay, they bought it after consulting you, and that was it. So
absolutely.
So you did the planning permission and everything once they bought the property.
Absolutely.
Just to stop you there quickly, we've got a question here. I should have asked this at the end, but we'll put it here. We've got this by Mr. Patel Ash, and he's asking you, do you have sites available for development so that I can give you the assignment? Is this an arrangement you would work with?
Do I have sites available so they can give an assignment? Are they asking whether I personally look for sites or?
No, I mean, if you knew of any sites or
that can get planning,
and then they can buy it and use your services for it. Am I right in saying that, Mr. Patel? So if I'm wrong or either of us are wrong, just put your comments down below.
If I believe we're on the same page, if that's what they're respectfully asking, then fantastic. Just to let you know, is as a service for planning permission, once you have a site or once anyone else has a site, then of course that's what we offer. Looking for sites and offering sites, we don't currently do that, but personally, for existing clients, they approach me with many sites, and I just do this for existing clients only. Okay. Just to show them how much I appreciate them. It's I assess their existing sites, but additionally, what I'm starting to do is personally have a look at sites that may be viable in order to get planning permission. So, for example, if I see a site that I believe has enough space on the side that you can propose a new build dwelling or you can get an additional unit, I will, this is what I'm starting to look into, I would first let my existing clients know, and this is to show my appreciation as well. So just to answer your question, Mr. Patel Ash, is I now started to look at sites, but purely for my existing clients only. But if you do have a proposal, if that you'd like me
to DM him and follow him, and then you can get your question answered, Mr. Patel. I'm sure he'll be able to help you on that. So moving on, we spoke about the easiest and the difficult situation. Sorry, I've got my kids banging on the door.
No worries. Everyone's welcome.
And then, was there a difficult time when it came to getting planning from the council?
Yes. Getting planning from the council is
and if I can just rephrase this, which is the hardest council to work with?
That's a great question. I usually get asked asked a similar question. It's there's been many contentious developments that I've focused on, and it's very subjective. It's subjective to the timing. It's subjective to the case officer that you have. Because they have their preference as well, right? It's subjective to their workload. Now, over the years, I've built of course, we've got contacts. So we've got direct contact that we can just reach people directly, especially within the London Borough of Ealing. There's many case officers that know of me and they know of they know of that precedent, let's say, the one that I described earlier. That's a development I'm very proud of, and I'm sure I've got in the pipeline that they're going to set a precedent as well.
Yeah.
We're in the Hayes area, which I'm looking forward to. With there are 32 boroughs within London, and there's 33 local authorities. If you classify London Corporation as a local authority, then there's 33. I've had the pleasure of working with all of them.
Wow.
Just throughout, not just with Xenoply, just throughout my career.
Throughout your career.
Okay. Just as my career as a whole. And of course, I've learned what developments are more viable in certain areas and what developments are less viable. So if they're, like, for example, the London Borough of Newham, they haven't got a policy against it, but they are resistant against the loss of a family dwelling house.
Gotcha. So they will be hard on giving you planning permissions on converting a house into 2 flats or 3 flats, things like that. Okay.
Yes. So if I've on many occasions before, I've had existing clients and I've had new clients approach me saying whether they can they have this area that they like to invest, and off the bat, before I even say let's move ahead with a formal service, just off the bat, transparently manage expectations. I say it's not viable, right? If it's that specific development for that specific borough, there's no need to pay, or there's no need to. I can just say it off the bat, right?
Yeah.
And so there are areas like that. It depends on where you are, right? So each area has their unique aspects. London Borough of Ealing, as you mentioned, is very open spaces, suburban open area.
Yep.
London Borough of Harrow is also similar to the London Borough of Ealing with open spaces. Now, when a borough has an open space, they like to protect open spaces, right? So if you have a large site and you'd like to propose a new build at the rear of your garden, at the side of your garden, redevelop a garage, they're going to be typically resistant against such a development, right?
Gotcha.
And of course, they've got conservation areas as well. So it's really subjective. For a flat conversion, one of the most contentious boroughs within London is the London Borough of Newham, and it's also the London Borough of Enfield.
Wow.
So they it's very subjective on a development type. It's very subjective on the case officer that you've got. It's very subjective on the timing that they're dealing with the application as well.
Yep.
The most and it depends on how you. My main focus is to increase success rate of a planning application. Like, planning permission, it can't be guaranteed.
Yep.
But my main focus is to get it as close as I can, right? So that's why there's a process to it, right? There's if there's a flat conversion, for example, in order to increase the success rate of a flat conversion, I direct it into a specific borough. Once I've directed it within a specific borough, I direct it within a specific area. This is if somebody wanted to purchase a site and they needed advice on planning permission.
Yep, got you.
I direct it into, and they want additional units in their portfolio. I direct that into a specific borough. Within that borough, I direct it to a specific area. So away from a conservation area, away from an area that has a high density of pre-existing converted properties.
Gotcha.
And once I've done that, I would direct it to the appropriate property. There's terrace, there's semi-detached, and there's detached.
Yep.
Right. And it's having a look at what property is more suitable that can get maximized the floor space. Once I've directed it to the property, so we started here and we're going in.
Yep.
And then once I've directed the property, then I break down the process.
Gotcha.
First, we maximize the site, see how many units we can actually achieve. 50 meters squared for a 1-bedroom, 61 for a 2-bedroom, 58 for a 1-bedroom across 2-story, for example.
Gotcha.
Then once we've done that, we've got the vehicle, we want a flat conversion, we know how many units we can achieve. Now we take a back step and we have a look at the process moving forward. Maximize the footprint, first phase, gain all the planning permissions, and then the second phase, we can go for the flat conversion as opposed to bunching them all together and applying. Because my main focus is to always manage expectations as well. Planning permission is not guaranteed, but I at least want to give my clients something, right?
Absolutely. It's all
if
it's
we come,
all it's all about giving back something to to the
absolutely,
people that work with you. So
uh,
finally, we've got like 10 minutes on our on our live stream right now because Instagram only gives an hour's worth. So I tend to finish my live streams within an hour. Um, Two of my final questions. How are you adopting yourself during this current climate? What are you doing differently?
it's
Because all I'm hearing from planning applications, valuers, bankers, lawyers, blaming everything on coronavirus right now. And that in turn leads to the buyer then saying to the vendor that we gotta
yeah.
wait for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks with all of this. So how are you adopting yourself and how are you sort of moving faster in terms of doing what you're doing right now?
What I've experienced now, fortunately, I haven't really felt an impact in terms of it's still as busy as it was before the COVID-19 pandemic, before lockdown, if you
Yeah,
will.
yeah.
It's still busy as it is now. I'm dealing with a lot of existing clients, trying to help them as much as I can. I can understand because the majority of my clients are property investors, developers, and landlords, so they've got a shock. I can understand, so I'm trying to do what I can to help them. So it's still normal, so to speak, as of now, fortunately, which I'm happy with. In terms of the way as a four member team, how we operate is we were working remotely before, right?
Okay.
So I personally, in that first year when it was just me, and after the second and the third year, and they started to build out the team.
Yeah.
One of my main focuses when starting this organization and the business was to create a remote culture.
Gotcha.
It was to create a culture where it's all about delivering on results. So how we do it, I'm not too concerned with that. It's all about the result, right?
Yep.
So we were working remotely beforehand. So now it hasn't really affected it as much, which is still pretty good. And I
And how
believe
are you finding it with the local authorities? Are they coming back to you in
I
time, or is there a delay on that part also?
I believe that there's what I've experienced. I believe that I've experienced a delay in general in terms of validating applications, registering applications, and on a few occasions I've seen that local authorities have outsourced their validation to a private company as well, right? So just to help them with their workload. So that's what I've seen.
Okay.
So there's a slight delay.
So you would say maybe that they would come back in a week's time. Now they're possibly taking 2 weeks or 3 weeks to come
Yeah.
back.
Yes.
Gotcha. All right.
And it's not necessarily just coming back. It's just the process. It's just the time that they take, which is understandable as well. But of course, on my end, I want to try and speed it up as fast as I can for existing clients. But it's understandable from the local authorities because on a normal occasion, on a monthly basis, they're dealing with maybe 10 to 12, 12, even usually a dozen applications a month, right? But I've seen cases where case officers are dealing with over 20 applications per case officer. They may have a team of 10 or even 6, but they're dealing with quite a lot. But again, on my perspective, I want to speed it up for my clients, but that's what I've experienced.
And what are you, I know we spoke about this, but what are you planning once this lockdown is over? What are you planning to do differently to adopt in a way that if this ever does happen again, then it doesn't affect your business as such? I know you're working remotely already, but what other measures are you taking in terms of not to hinder your business or your workmanship or whatever that puts all these pressures on a business?
Like you said, it's already working remotely and so on.
Yeah.
I would what I would adopt is actually I've been working on a few new products and services for specifically our existing client, that I was planning on launching last year.
Okay.
So I would say launching those, and it's purely for the benefit of our existing clients, and I just focus on existing clients, and of course, that's the best strategy, I believe, right?
What does someone have to do to become a client of yours?
It's before, as I mentioned before, I'm grateful to be in the fortunate position I am. Is now it's a lot more selective, and I'm working with the type of clients that I like to. I'm working on design proposals I'd like to, the applications that I'd like to. Before I accept any client, before I accept any project, I conduct a planning feasibility assessment. A planning feasibility assessment is just for me to conduct a desktop study. It could take 1 hour, it could take 2, it could take 3, regardless, as long as I get a thorough understanding of what's viable, what's not viable.
Gotcha.
If there's a proposal, if somebody says to me, I'd like a flat conversion within the London Borough of Newham, and you and I know that London Borough of Newham is completely resistant,
Yep.
I would say, look, respectfully, it's not going to work.
Okay.
But if you still want to go ahead with it, then of course manage expectations. I'm still happy to produce the best supporting application that I can to support that case. But regardless, have a clear expectations that it may not work. And then fine, that we may go ahead like that. But usually it's if it's not viable off the bat, then I'd say it, and then usually it's fine. From there, we may move on to another project. But before, if it's a standard, just a normal project, then it would be a planning feasibility assessment. I started my planning feasibility assessment. It's actually a product that I created. It's a planning feasibility assessment. I created it from one of my clients who were in Munich, and it may have been just over or just under 2 years ago. A planning feasibility assessment. When you're looking for a site, it allows me to look into that site, desktop study, what's viable, what can we achieve on site, what's the best process moving forward, and what's the success rate of what we want to achieve. Is it a flat conversion? What's the steps that we need? Which extension types can we have? How many units can we have? How many bedrooms per unit can we have? What's the process moving forward? In an email, very clear, point. You have that digested information to make an informed decision.
And if they accept that, then they are allowed
exactly.
to become a client.
Okay. Exactly.
Finally, we've got 2 minutes left. So finally, any last pieces of advice that you would like to give to youngsters out there who are looking for an architectural career, or clients who are looking for planning? Any just a few pieces of advice that someone could take on board and be like, okay, I've got my positive feeling of the day.
Fantastic. For students, I would say, whilst you're at university, make the best use of your time and try and replicate what you believe you would be doing in your career during that time, with less responsibilities, with more, mainly less responsibilities. So do it during that time. Forge relationships, network, build a network that you would effectively build from when you start your career. So that's for students, and it's worked for me clearly. For developers, for investors, for landlords, I would say right now, I know it's a difficult time in terms of the market's on hold, nobody's buying, nobody's selling. But like every smart investor knows, and all of our investor clients who I believe are astute developers and smart developers, like they know, is the market may be on hold, but it's an opportunity for them.
Absolutely.
And what I'm doing is and what we're doing is revisiting their existing portfolio to optimize what we can do, right? If they have a property performing well under this market, what can I do given my experience, and what can we change in the planning perspective in order to make it perform better in this current market? So that's what we're doing, and of course I've got a lot of respect for our clients, and that's the...
Absolutely. But thank you so much for joining me. It was eye-opening in terms of getting different insights about planning from yourself, Samsatan, and we'll do this again, possibly
Yeah.
discuss another planning application or something. I want to do different parts of it. So thank you so much for joining me, and I shall speak to you soon.
Likewise, thank you very much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Have a lovely day and give my
Take care.
regards to your wife as well.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Contact.